Thank you.
Meet Dad. He's a real man.
Got a beer? 7 o'clock in the morning. Scotch?
An all-out go-getter. But when his job pulled the plug on him...
I'm fine. You son of a dude!
They threw a switch.
Go, better late. Yeah, okay. Good luck.
And he became the lady of the house. It sure looks like he got a terrific deal.
Honey, if you call and I'm not here, I'll be at the gym or at the gun club.
Exercise. And relaxation. Good home cooking. Arts and crafts.
Kenny! Don't paint your sister.
And fun and games with the neighbors.
Are these any good?
Got 2 pair. Got plenty.
That's when he was forced to face the bare facts. His new job is a mother. Michael Keaton
Where's Bobby keep the extra diapers?
and Terry Garr in Mr. Mom, a mother of a comedy.
Hello, hello. I'm Katie, and welcome to Retromade, your pop culture rewind. Today, we go back to 1983 to explore how a John Hughes-penned classic captured the era's shifting family dynamics and remains a favorite today with Mr. Mom. I am very happy to have a returning guest with me today, Craig Cohen from The GOAT, a Brian De Palma fan podcast. Craig, thank you so much for joining me on season 2 of Retromade.
Oh, thank you for having me, and congrats on season 2. And yeah, I had a blast last time I was here, so I'm looking forward to today.
Thank you. Well, tell us what's new with you in the podcasting world. What do you got going on with Brian De Palma?
Oh yeah, the GOAT chugs along. I took the fall off, and we sort of did a relaunch at the beginning of the year. And we continue to explore and celebrate the filmography of America's greatest director, Brian De Palma. And as you listen to this, I'm going to be starting a series of solo episodes, which should be pretty interesting because typically I'm not a solo podcaster, so it will be a nice experiment. So if you're into films at all, or you're not familiar with Brian De Palma, give the show a listen. Every episode, I let my guest pick a movie and then a scene from that movie to help illustrate why De Palma is as great as he is.
That's great. I highly recommend. And I'm looking forward to these solo ones.
Yeah, it should be neat.
Yeah.
It should be neat. I'm going to kind of focus on the movies that nobody wants to talk about.
I have been there, Craig. I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to ask somebody to do this, so I'll just do it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's a nice sort of different way to my podcasting muscles.
Mm-hmm. So listeners, if you're new to the show, we cover 80s and 90s movies. Each season has the theme. This season is John Hughes. And we set the stage for the time that the movie was released by opening the time capsule from that time. And there's a new spin, pun intended, this season. So we're going to do that. I'm going to spin this wheel and see what category we land on and see if we can trip up Craig, or maybe he's an expert in 1983. We shall see. Okay. All right. Can you see?
I can see the wheel.
Our wheel of Retromade.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see what we get here.
Oh, this is cool. Oh, so close to Stars and Scandals.
Pages of the Past. We'll do a few. Which 1983 children's magazine, known for its vibrant illustrations and engaging stories, was popular among young readers, particularly in the UK, I guess.
Oh, shit. It
was here too.
I was going to say highlights.
Good guess.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's not.
Oh.
I think that came slightly later.
Okay. Goodness, I highlights is all I had loaded and ready to go.
Well, UK listeners, tell me if you remember the Look and Learn magazine. Does that sound familiar to you at all, Craig?
Not at all.
All right. Well, maybe this one. Okay. Which 1983 children's fantasy novel by Roald Dahl features a young boy and his Norwegian grandmother battling a society of witches who despise children.
Oh, is it called The Witches?
It is.
Okay,
Yeah.
because they turned that into a movie, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, with like Angela, what's her name?
Angelica Houston.
Angelica Houston, yeah.
I love it. It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
All right, let's do another category.
I was curious about this one.
Can Craig come out to play is our category. What 1983 gadget, which featured a small joystick controller and a cartridge system, was an affordable alternative to larger video game consoles, offering a portable gaming experience?
Okay, so this is interesting because I'm trying to remember when certain things came out. I mean, the obvious answer. Your question didn't say this is when it debuted, right?
No,
Okay.
not necessarily.
I think the obvious answer is the Atari 2600.
You are correct,
Okay.
Craig.
Okay. Excellent. All right.
I'm shocked you even got the 2600
Oh, well. I'm old.
because it says technically, like, according to my research, it was the Atari 2600 or the Atari 7800, although released earlier, continued to be popular in 1983. That's what it says.
Yeah, I think you said affordable too, right? Was part. Yeah, so that's why I went with the 2600. If memory serves, that was sort of like, I think what really got Atari into a lot more homes was the fact that there was like an affordable version. I think like maybe like the graphics or whatever. I mean, we're talking about 8-bit or whatever, but so it wasn't like crazy, but I think it just didn't have as much horsepower as that other model.
Okay.
Cool. I'm glad I got that.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure when the Nintendo NES system debuted.
I think 83 was way too early for it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And then there was another system, which I don't know if you or, ColecoVision was another like Atari competitor. And I don't know if there was some kind of legal issues around ColecoVision. They may or may not. And I didn't do my research here because I didn't know you were going to ask me this. But they may or may not have been like using games they didn't have the rights to use.
Got it.
Something like that. But either way, ColecoVision, like if you look at probably like hardcore gaming circles, it probably are people that collect the ColecoVision and then there was another one called, I think, Intellivision. There were a bunch of home
I've never even
gaming
heard
systems.
of these.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow, that's cool. Well,
Yeah.
you seem strong in this category. Let me see. Which popular toy from 1983, often associated with a small plastic soldier and adventure theme, leading to a series of action figures, comic books, and even a TV series?
Oh, that's G.I. Joe.
What's the tagline?
Real American Hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
G.I.
I mean, that was, you have no idea for a 9-year-old kid in 1983 what a big deal G.I. Joe was. We bought the comics, we had the figures, and you could really see which figures were most popular because the joints would loosen. So you'd pick them up and like their arms and legs would just flop.
Oh,
And
yeah,
you'd be like,
yeah.
every kid's like Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes would be just like worn to heck. And then of course the animated show, which was just like a juggernaut. Yeah, no, I mean, that was an amazing time to be a 9-year-old.
Yeah, I guess I'm a household of all girls, so we had 0 G.I. Joes in our home, but cousins. I'm vaguely familiar with the G.I. Joe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do another category.
Yeah.
Commercial countdown is our category. Some of them are so easy.
Mm.
We'll do a couple maybe. Which beverage company's 1983 commercial featured the tagline, "Just for the taste of it," promoting their new sugar-free soda?
Oh, that's Diet Coke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's Diet Coke. Yep.
That's wild that they introduced Diet Coke in 1983, and then that's not too far removed from like New Coke.
New Coke was later in the 80s, you're right.
But that was also sugar based. But it's
Yeah.
surprising to me that I don't really remember the introduction of Diet Coke. Like, for me, I always remember Diet Coke being an option, but we also didn't drink soda a lot when I was a kid. That was one of those things where there wasn't soda in the house. Like there, so if and when you did drink it, it was a special occasion. And then also, obviously, you're not going to be ordering a Diet Coke.
I did. It's funny. Diet Coke is my jam. I don't buy soda currently. I was literally like, I think addicted to it. So if it's here, I will drink it. But there are certain things, certain times when a fountain, especially Diet Coke sounds good.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. There is no comparison between a canned or a bottled soda and the fountain variety. Like peak fountain soda was like prime McDonald's Coke on tap. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, and as a soda drinker, like when we drink soda now, like we either have Pepsi Zero or Coke Zero in the house. I was never really a big fan of the mix of sugar when you're eating a hamburger or anything like that. But either way, yeah, no, it's just surprising because I guess that makes sense because in 85 and Back to the Future, like Marty orders the Pepsi free.
I don't remember.
Yeah. So I guess that was the start of the whole diet soda trend, like where like people were like, wait, there's a ton of sugar in stuff we're drinking.
I prefer the taste of it. And yeah, when I was in 83, I probably was not drinking Diet Coke. I was like a toddler, but
they didn't put it in your bottle.
But when I was very young, I don't remember having soda in the house either. And it was a treat. And honestly, I think it was Shasta brand.
Oh, okay.
But then when I was like in the 90s, we had a fridge downstairs for soda and beer. And after school every day, I would go get a Coke. I'd pour it in a glass and use a straw also because I needed the Diet Coke. Yeah. And then I tell this story to people and they look at me funny. But there is something to the way that places mix the syrup. There's something to McDonald's why it supposedly tastes better. It has something to do with the diameter of the straw. And it's a stronger syrup because it is meant to accommodate for the ice melting.
Yeah. I kind of feel like I watched like a 10-minute YouTube video on McDonald's fountain soda at some point in the last couple years. Wild. And it's funny, like they have these freestyle machines now.
Oh yeah.
Which are cool. But the trick to those freestyle machines, if you ever find yourself in front of one, run a cycle of water through it prior to making your selection. Because what's going to happen is if the person before you did like lemon lime or something, that the remnants of that are still going to be in the pipeline.
Of course.
Give it a blast of water before you start your selection. And then the freestyle machine won't taste as weird as it some does.
It's a good call. Good call. I also, vague memory from childhood, we would go to Kansas City, which was probably like 3 hours from where we lived. And so we would go to like a Royals game and I would order a Diet Coke at the game. And it tasted better there. I think there's something in the water in Kansas City because also Worlds and Oceans of Fun. I just remember their Diet Coke tasting significantly better than anywhere else. And I don't know if it's like more chlorinated water or something, but if anybody lives in Kansas City, please let me know.
Yeah.
All right. Let's maybe do one more, Craig, and then we'll get into the movie.
Oh, this is cool. This is fun.
Oh, we already did that one. Come on.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah. Wow. There's 12 categories, so I don't know.
I don't know. What are the odds?
Oh, my God. Same. What? Come on.
Now, if it goes to commercials, right? Was that commercials was the last one? Oh, my goodness.
Okay, that's the third time that we've come on. Can Craig come out to play? Can we get another category? These are always fun.
Oh,
all right.
Okay.
VHS Vault is the category, Craig. Do you have any, before I give you any hints, do you have any inclinations for what the top 5 movie rentals in 1983 were?
I'm going to say in that top 5, you have to have 83.
I would have guessed that too. It's
Okay.
not.
Okay. Wow. You know what the wild thing
It's
is?
probably because it took a little longer for it to come. Like at that time, it would take, because that
Longer.
probably came out in the end of 82.
Yeah. Well,
in
the
the
thing is, there's a
theater.
Rocky 3 poster in Mr.
Yeah.
Mom.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. Goodness, I'm trying to think of movies like from 1980, like E.T. maybe, but E.T. was probably still in theaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was 81, wasn't it?
Yeah, but no joke. We had I might have told the story last season. We had a theater in the town I lived in before. So downtown, we had a dual screen theater.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, go to the left for one movie, go to the right for the other. And there was a 14-month run where E.T. had like theater 1 locked down, and they
Over
would
a
just
year,
switch
wow.
out like what was in theater 2.
Mm-hmm. That's wild.
Yeah. So E.T. had a long run. Whoa. It has to be a Star Wars movie, right?
These honestly, I'm kind of surprised. So I'll start with the hints. The first one I think you'll get.
Mhm.
Which 1982 action comedy film features a tough cop teaming up with a wisecracking convict to catch a pair of cop killers?
Oh, 48 Hours.
Yeah, that
Okay.
became the top video rental. That was the number one.
You know what's funny about that? I had that movie in the back of my head because when VHS came out, it was a rental market. They were not, you were not supposed to buy them. So I remember one of my brother's friends, his mom bought him VHS movies, and like she had spent like $59 or whatever on the VHS of 48 Hours. And it blew our mind that we were like, wait a minute, you own this, you're not renting it. And also the prices were just crazy. I think it was like, I don't think it was until like Disney and like probably like around like Jurassic Park when like movies actually became affordable enough to purchase.
I remember we had some, but the vast majority of our VHS collection was movies taped from TV,
Yep.
of which Mr. Mom was one.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
wild.
the
48
next
Hours,
one,
yeah.
this 1981 teen comedy, notorious for its raunchy humor and set in a 1950s
Oh, it's
Florida high school.
Porky's.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Who directed Porky's?
Who?
Bob Clark, who also did A Christmas Story.
You're kidding.
Yeah, it's always funny to me that, well, aside from the fact that he did Black Christmas, which is like one of the first slasher films, he also did Christmas Story, but then he also did this like Porky's, which I think probably unfairly gets lumped into all the sequels that became like, more and more raunchy. But yeah, no, that's like always my little like sort of dinner party trivia is like, hey, do you know the guy that directed Christmas Story directed Porky's?
Well, the guy who directed First Blood also directed Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, it's wild.
So,
it's wild. Yeah.
Okay, I think you'll get this one too. Which 1982 science fiction film directed by Ridley Scott featuring a dystopian future and a replicant hunting protagonist gained a cult following, popular video rental in 1983?
Oh, yeah, that's Blade Runner.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 1982 is famously probably like the best summer for sci-fi. You had Blade Runner, E.T. was still in theaters, and you had John Carpenter's The Thing.
That's right. Yeah.
It's funny that Blade Runner is on that list because I've always thought that like Blade Runner was not held in any kind of regard until it was reassessed in the 90s. So that's kind of interesting to see that it bombed in theaters, but people were renting it on VHS. That's cool. It's also interesting. I'm a Blade Runner guy. But it's also interesting that people that were buying and renting that tape were seeing the theatrical version of the movie, which was hard to find for a very long time after that. Like if you tried to find a theatrical cut in the 90s, you were going to have a really, really hard time.
Really?
Yeah. So the original theatrical cut has this really sort of divisive voiceover. And there's theories that like Harrison Ford was against it. So he like purposefully like tanked the recording session. And there's people that love the voiceover and there's other people that absolutely hate it. Now every version of the movie's available on home video. So it's just a matter of which flavor you feel like watching.
I'm kind of embarrassed, but I've never seen Blade Runner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's worth watching.
Mhm.
And there's Ridley Scott's final cut, quote unquote.
Okay.
That's if and when you're going to watch it, just watch that version.
Okay.
It's a great movie. It's definitely worth watching. It's Rutger Hauer, like one of the best
Yeah.
performances.
I've heard good things, and I have heard that it really the cult status portion of it is kind of what I've heard.
Yeah.
Similar with The Thing, I guess. I have seen The Thing. I covered it
Yeah.
on my Kurt Russell
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Patrick Swayze
yeah.
season. But okay, there's two more.
Okay.
This one, I adore this movie so much. I got to find a way to insert it in a season. Which 1982 musical film based on a Broadway play about an optimistic orphan during the Great Depression?
Oh, it's Annie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
remember seeing Annie in theaters, and it's funny. My dad's parents, my grandparents on my dad's side, they lived in Queens when I was a kid, and we used to go to the movies with them, and we'd go to the movies in Manhattan.
Ooh, cool.
So this was like the theaters that have 2,000 seats.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, like thinking about movie theaters now, like you're lucky if you have 75 seats. Like these were like theaters from like the 1920s
Yeah.
or whatever. So we saw Annie in a 2,000 seat theater, but we were right in the front because it was probably sold out. So I have vivid memories of watching Annie, like where you're looking up and the screen is 40 feet tall or whatever. Wild. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be so cool to watch a movie in a theater like that. I don't think I would want to be in the front row, but yeah.
Yeah. No, it's wild. Yeah. I think if you ever have the chance to go to like Hollywood, like the Chinese theater, my man's
Mhm.
Chinese theater is a similar experience. They're
Okay.
like theaters just hit different back then.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, I mean-
although the seats are so much better now.
Yeah. I don't go very often for it to matter,
No.
but I'm envisioning you talking about this. What I'm envisioning in my head is the scene of them in Annie going to a movie
Okay.
in New
yeah.
York. Okay, the last one, number 5, Rental for 83. It is a 1982 horror anthology film inspired by the works of Stephen King and directed by George A. Romero.
Creepshow.
Never seen it.
Oh my goodness.
I never would have guessed that.
Yeah. Oh, Creepshow. It's oh my goodness. Yeah. It's awesome. There is a great segment in Creepshow with Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen. And it's funny because you're so used to Leslie Nielsen being like, you know, the wacky Frank
Yeah.
Drebin from Naked Gun or the pilot, you know, the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Creepshow is so great. There's another one with Adrienne Barbeau. Oh, it's phenomenal.
okay.
It's such a fun, it's like, it's campy horror, which is like
Mhm.
some of like the best horror. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Creepshow. That's great. I can totally understand why was one of the top rentals. Of the year.
Yeah. All right, you guys, that was the time capsule.
That was
We
a lot of
went-
fun.
Yeah, good. Now, before we get into Mr. Mom, because my season is all about John Hughes, I was curious if you had anything to share. You know, were you a kid when you realized that he was a master behind a lot of these movies, or did it take you a while, or what's
No.
your history?
Well, absolutely. I think I probably saw Vacation first,
Mm-hmm.
but I think most people that lived it probably 16 Candles or The Breakfast Club are sort of their John Hughes center of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's you kind of spring off from there. It's then like, oh, you connect the dots to Weird Science, or you connect the dots back to Vacation. But yeah, no, I mean, John Hughes, he was definitely a name you were aware of, and you were kind of aware also of like what kind of movie you could expect.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
And why did you choose Mr. Mom?
Just because it's so funny. When I went back to watch this last night, I hadn't watched it in probably 20 plus years. And it's amazing how I remembered every single beat. So, I mean, it's just a movie we watched a lot. It was probably on cable a lot when I was a kid. And I was just like, well, you know what? I haven't seen Mr. Mom in a long time, but like I said, it's a movie I basically knew by heart. So I was like, oh, that'll be a fun one to talk about. And it's also funny too, because there's people like that, you know, Michael Keaton is such an interesting actor because like for a lot of people that know him from Batman, it like blows their mind when they go back and see all of the pre-Batman stuff that he did. And it's interesting because for me, like, Michael Keaton was the perfect Bruce Wayne for me. I thought he looked the part and he acted the part. And I think one thing that a lot of superhero movies after Batman sort of fell into was like getting the exact actor you'd expect for the film. And sometimes it would be like, a lot of times you're not getting the person with the acting chops for it. You're getting somebody who's more like maybe physical and nowadays it's like Chris Evans can just go to the gym for 12 weeks and get in like Captain America shape. But like back then, you weren't. Like they would just build all his muscles into the suit and that was it. But yeah, no, so it was kind of the idea to be able to also talk about, you know, Michael Keaton before Batman. But also now, isn't Michael Keaton going by his birth name?
Which is what?
Michael Douglas.
What? No way.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Why?
Well,
there's a very famous Michael Douglas.
Exactly. So he changed his name, I guess, when he started, you know, acting. His agent's like, well, obviously you can't use your real name. And I guess now he's at a point in his life where he's like, you know what? I want my name back. I kind of feel like I read about it in the last couple months. Like
that. I can't believe. Well, you heard it here first, you guys, on Retromade. I did not know that, but I was wowed by it. I was like, wow, he looks so young.
Well, this was first lead role. I think
you're
he
right.
had done what, like Night Shift?
Night something, but he wasn't the top build.
Yeah, that was like a dual.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Henry Winkler, I think.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I think they run. I want to say they run like a prostitution.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's Ron Howard. Yeah, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but
okay.
I did read that this was like Michael Keaton's like first like lead, like him carrying a movie.
Yeah, and it worked. Speaking of which, let's get into Mr. Mom. It was released August 19th, 1983. And then I thought this was really interesting. The last episode that we did was The Great Outdoors. The rating, the runtime, and the IMDb rating are all exactly the same this episode.
That's amazing.
PG, exactly 1 hour and 31 minutes, and a 6.6 IMDb.
Yeah, well, speaking of that 1 hour, 31 minute, 91 minute running time, that is the ideal comedy running time.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never change my opinion on that. As much as I love a lot of comedies from the Judd Apatow era, they're all bloated. You know, when a comedy gets to the 2 hour mark, you really have to be delivering the laughs. For me, the sweet spot for comedy, 91 minutes all day. Somebody must have felt that, because it's amazing to me that like Great Outdoors and Mr. Mom are both 91 minutes long.
It's funny. It seems both of them kind of seem longer than that for some reason. But yeah, a lot. You're right. The ones that really, that is kind of some of the secret sauce is an hour and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's wild too is like how much story you can fit into that runtime. But then also, as you get to the end of the movie, especially with Mr. Mom, I was waiting for a particular scene and I'm like, wait, the movie's almost over. And I'm like, there's 6 minutes left. And like the moment I'm thinking of hasn't happened yet. And then I'm like, yeah, well, because credits were like 45 seconds back. It was like the movie would end and your credits would be like less than a minute and you're done. Whereas now, like you see if there's 16 minutes left, you're like, oh, 9 minutes of that is credits.
That's a very good point. So the director here I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Stan Dragotti.
Yeah.
Are you familiar?
No, not at all. And it's funny when that credit came up on the screen, I was like, you know what? Until just now, I've never thought about who directed that movie. It just wasn't as a kid, you don't think about that kind of stuff unless it's like
a big
John
name,
Hughes or Steven Spielberg or something. But I was like, if you had held a gun to my head prior to sitting down to watch this movie last night and asked me who directed Mr. Mom, I wouldn't be here for the recording. And he doesn't have a big filmography either.
No, he doesn't. He also directed the 1989 movie She's Out of Control, which is similar enough.
Yeah.
But he began his career as a director of TV commercials. So he is responsible for the I Love New York campaign.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's who Stan is.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And I also wonder if, and you'll probably get into this though, like this originally started out as like an Aaron Spelling produced TV project. So I wonder if that's kind of how he got looped in. I don't know enough about the development, but I know that it was originally developed as like a movie of the week, maybe.
Yes. A TV spinoff did come out a year later.
And it's amazing.
Yeah. All different people. Like it's just nobody is the same from it.
I didn't know until last night when I like started Googling and stuff that there was in 2019, there was like another Mr. Mom TV show the premise of it was daughter from the first movie was all grown up and she has to join the workforce and her husband. It was on whatever MGM's streaming service was called back in 2019. I had no memory of it.
Was anybody in it that we would know? No.
I don't remember any names jumping out, but
you're right. So according to producer and financier Bruce McNall, Aaron Spelling intended this to be a backdoor pilot for prospective broadcast TV series at some later point. And apparently this was pretty common for networks to create a series based on a movie, thereby maximizing their revenue streams from the same IP, right?
Yeah.
So, and there was a TV spinoff, but it was not successful at all. The movie was that
well, that was the other thing, Katie, is it cost what, like $5 million to make, and it grossed like over $64 million, which
almost $65 million.
Yeah. So I don't even know what the adjustment for inflation is, but that's probably, $500 million or something in 2025 numbers or dollars. That's amazing. So this was a smash hit. So it makes sense that they would have made tried to make a TV show out of it.
That is true. You are curious about the director, if that came from this like TV world.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I guess. So Stan ended up directing the film after John Hughes turned it down. So they originally wanted John Hughes to direct it because he wrote it, which we'll talk about. But since this was a Hollywood movie, it was set in Detroit. And I did note that immediately. I was like, oh, it's not in Chicago.
Yeah.
Therefore, it was filmed in Hollywood. And John Hughes does movies only in Chicago. He likes to film in Chicago and not in Hollywood. And then guess who was originally, after that happened, before they landed on Stan, guess who they asked after John Hughes turned it down to direct?
I want to say maybe like a John Landis or somebody.
Ted Kotcheff.
Oh my goodness. We were just talking about him earlier with First Blood. So he was known as the comedy guy before he made like one of the greatest action dramas of all time.
And then later, because that was in 82, and then Weekend at Bernie's was, what is that, late 80s or
86, maybe 86, 87.
Just
like
interesting.
Yeah,
so anyway,
that's amazing how everything sort of ties together.
I was also curious after watching this. There was so much seeming licensing requirements in this movie, but it was made for $5 million.
Yeah.
But they had the Rocky Gonna Fly theme. They had the Jaws theme. There was another big one. What am I missing? There was another big movie theme, like music-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a very interesting point, but I also think that licensing hadn't gotten as big back then, and I don't recall, but there was a very dark period in the early days of DVD where movies and TV shows would be put out and they'd replace all that stuff because the licensing wasn't captured for a format that didn't exist yet. I remember as a big Miami Vice fan, Miami Vice took a long time to come out on DVD. And I was always worried. I'm like, oh my God, when it comes out on DVD, they're going to have all the music taken off. And then I think there was like Universal ended up owning like everything, around that time. So when when Miami Vice came out, I remember they were like all music included. And I was like, oh my God. But then you also have shows in Cincinnati, which has a lot of stock generic music. So I wonder if there was a period where like Mr. Mom, if you got an early DVD of it, like the Rocky music isn't there.
Oh, that's a good point. I wonder.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was trying to think of, Young and the Restless.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Like a huge component of this.
Yeah.
So Young and the Restless, the Rocky music and the Jaws music. All right, you guys. So yeah, I said that John Hughes, obviously he's the writer here. This is the second feature film written by him. You know what the first one was?
It wasn't Vacation?
I think it was Vacation.
Okay.
Yeah. The same year, I want to say. They both were 83.
It feels, like maybe 82 or 83 for Vacation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would highly recommend you guys give Mr. Mom a rewatch and then come back and listen to us because it is available for free in a ton of places.
When I looked at my options to watch this, I knew it was on YouTube and I was like, oh, I can watch it commercial free.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it was on Roku. It was on Tubi. So this is not a hard movie to find.
But yeah, you're right. I did have to put up with the commercials. You guys it's a 1983 movie. So if you don't recall, if it's been a minute, we have Jack Butler, who's Michael Keaton, is laid off, and his wife, Caroline, played by Terry Garr, lands a job forcing him to take on the chaotic world of stay-at-home parenting. From grocery store mishaps to taming a rebellious vacuum, Jack's journey from clueless to competent dad is filled with laughs and heart.
Yeah.
Mr.
Well, you know what's funny about that? I didn't realize it until watching it again that he's furloughed.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, because furloughing wasn't really something I thought about. I know every time the government shuts down, they furlough employees, but I experienced the furlough situation during COVID. I was furloughed for 15 months. So like that hit me. Like as soon as they talked about him being furloughed, I was like, I understand this completely. Whereas when I was a kid, I just assumed he had lost his job, but it was like, oh, he's furloughed, so there's the potential to come back.
They do kind of interchangeably use laid off, fired, furloughed. They kind of, depending on the situation on the scene. But I was curious because, when they're in Jeffrey Tambor's office and they find out that they essentially are losing their job, and he points out, no, technically, you're being furloughed.
Yeah.
But he said, you get a severance. And I didn't. What's the story? Did you? Did you get a
you know what?
severance?
That doesn't track because you wouldn't be getting a severance.
Right. So that's what I was like, oh, I thought that was if you got laid off, but
yeah, that for me, that scene in the office is one of the funnier scenes in the movie, and it probably wasn't as funny when I was a kid, but as an adult. But you got Christopher Lloyd in a little baby part. I guess he was trying to make the breakthrough between Taxi on TV and like the movies, but his reaction, like Jack walks in the office and he's like strangling Jeffrey Tambor, and then he threatens to like jump out of the window.
Yeah.
Like for me, that was funny. And then you see Jack's reaction where he's like, he calms him down, and then he finds out he's laid off as well, and he almost has the same exact reaction. And Jeffrey Tambor,
they carpooled to work together, like from the sub, and
they
like,
even
why
shared
didn't you tell
like
us this?
they kicked in on gas money and all that. And Jeffrey Tambor just plays such a slimy shit in this movie. I absolutely loved it, and that was my frame of reference for Jeffrey Tambor, like forever. Like when Arrested Development came out, I'm like, oh, it's Jeffrey Tambor from Mr. Mom, or like when Larry Sanders came out, it's Jeffrey Tambor from Mr. Mom. So yeah, it's just amazing to see like Christopher Lloyd though, 2 years before he was going to become like a mega movie star as Doc Brown. It's a little baby role. Like he's in the beginning scene, and he doesn't even come back for the end. His character's mentioned, but he actually doesn't.
It's true. Yeah. It's just at the beginning, he and the other guy. So he's one of so they're all, they work at this
or something?
car company. Yeah.
Yeah.
Engineers, and they carpool to work together. And I knew he was in this. I had forgotten that Jeffrey Tambor was in it. So I was like, oh, sweet. He's great. And then I was like, Christopher Lloyd, Jeffrey Tambor always looks like Jeffrey Tambor.
Yeah.
But Christopher Lloyd looked like he still has dark hair.
Yeah. And he's got the glasses.
Yeah. Yeah. So those guys are in it. Obviously, Michael Keaton is our lead role here. It's his first starring role. He plays Jack Butler. and his wife is Carolyn Butler, played
Terry
by Terry
Garr.
Garr.
Yeah. Uh,
Do you have opinions?
I love Terry Garr. And, I can't pinpoint like an exact Terry Garr movie, but yeah, no, Terry Garr is just such a great screen presence. And I actually just discovered in the past year an awesome movie that she did that I guess is kind of a cult classic now. But Francis Ford Coppola made a movie after The Godfather, after Apocalypse Now, I think after The Outsiders, maybe not after The Outsiders, but it's called One from the Heart, which is an experimental musical set in Las Vegas. Just a phenomenal movie. Terry Garr is so good in it. Yeah, if you ever have the option to watch One from the Heart, absolutely.
Well, Francis Ford Coppola, Terry Garr, I'm in. Yeah.
And the thing about it is Francis Ford Coppola was like such an amazing experimental filmmaker. So I think the big thing about One from the Heart is like it was filmed completely on a soundstage. Like he had bought the studio that he renamed Zoetripe or whatever. So like they recreated Fremont Street in Las Vegas on a soundstage.
Oh my
Just
God.
a visually amazing movie. The technical stuff that goes on in that movie alone makes it worth watching. But yeah, I had no idea this movie existed until 8 months ago or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, and it was Terry Garr. So it brought her back into my sort of awareness right before she died, So yeah, I love Terry Garr. She's just such a genuine presence on screen.
She was really good. I mean, it's funny she didn't, because like you said, nothing really is coming to mind.
Yeah.
But her, she didn't win, but she was nominated for an Oscar for her role in Tootsie with, who's that, Dustin Hoffman?
Dustin Hoffman and Jessica Lange. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then she's also very much known for her role in the 1974 movie Young Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know her when she was a little older, she played Phoebe's birth mom.
Oh,
on Friends.
Okay, yeah.
So that's Terry Garr. She's fun. I like her.
Yeah.
And then Martin Mull, who I also adore, plays, I don't know, this seems kind of he's skeezy, which is in character for him, but he plays Ron Richardson, who's the head of the ad agency where Carolyn ends up working.
Yeah. And that's another whole great sequence in the movie where they have an annual like barbecue party at his
corporate
mansion.
Olympics is what it was called at his house.
And everybody on the team knowingly throws the event so he can win. And of course, Jack's not on board with that until the very last minute when he sort of throws the Olympics and, he winks to his wife. I saw that was really, and as a kid, that whole sequence was great to watch the other guys try and sabotage him. They trip him up because they know that like, if he wins, it'll be bad for everyone.
You have to let the boss win.
Yeah.
I know that was really interesting because this movie did a good job portraying Jack. He was easily swayed by or manipulated by somebody testing his masculinity, so to speak, in a lot of ways. So they go to this thing, they're not going to stay long, and he says he's not going to play or he's not going to participate in this Olympics race.
Mm-hmm.
But then Martin Mull's characters, he easily manipulates him by saying something like, oh, well, go hang out with the other wives or something. And then he's like, all right, give me my sweats. I'm in. But then he does end up doing the supportive thing for his wife by falling down and throwing it and kind of winking at her. And and then later, he goes to the strip club with some of the ladies, and he's very, he just kind of goes. He's a really good sport. It's a male strip club, mind you, and he's the only man there. And I just thought he did such a good job of being. It was very progressive for 1983 how he was acting at a male strip club. So then that gives him another point in the, sincere, genuine, not your typical 80s like masculine.
Yeah.
But then he's, I'll be at the gym or the gun club, so he goes back and forth like a real person would.
Yeah. You know what? That's really interesting because I didn't think about it until you just pointed it out. But yeah, there's nothing they're not punching down in that strip
Mhm.
club scene.
Mm-mm.
Like they didn't go for any kind of obvious jokes or anything like that. Like he gives the guy the dollar bill and asks where he puts it and then says, "Oh no, don't tell me." But I mean, yeah, there wasn't any kind of like panic around the jokes or anything like that. Like,
No.
yeah, that's really interesting. The other thing I wanted to say that was kind of amazing is this is like sort of the start of the robotic vacuum, the Roomba. Did Jack invent the
Oh.
Roomba?
That it was like a rogue vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, it was like it had a mind of its own.
Yeah, but then at the end, he's got it on some kind of control, right?
Oh, I must have missed that.
Yeah,
Did
or
he?
like when he tells it to go to the room to clean up. And that's where the Jaws bit comes in. Like
Mhm.
it's funny what the one little boy is making chili, which is
Oh,
hilarious in itself. This is, I guess, the scene where like everything goes to
mass
shit.
chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's funny. He asks where the vacuum is, and he's like, "Oh, you mean Jaws?" And then like the vacuum gets its own like sort of establishing shot with the John Williams score and everything. And then there's like the TV repair person's there, the bug guy's there, and then I think there's like the washing machine goes haywire.
There were 3 service people there at
Yeah.
the same time. The vacuum like eats the younger son's whoopee with his
Yeah, yeah,
blankie.
yeah.
And then it all kind of comes crashing down with the baby coming in and she's eating chili.
Yeah, and then the TV repair lady's like, "You gave a baby chili."
Yeah. And the washing machine.
Yeah, because he just loads up the washing machine. He's like, "Oh, let's skip all these steps," and he just puts everything in there. Yeah, it's funny. Like, there's 2 chaotic scenes in the movie. There's that sequence, and then also when he goes food shopping, which
Yep.
is just like a disaster, which is funny. There's the whole sequence where like he bumps the lady, and she's like, "I've got the right of way," and he's at the deli counter trying to order ham, and she's like, she rattles off like 6 different kinds of ham. It was just funny, and it was interesting to see that there's still people that would probably happen to even today.
There are people of a certain age. I've noticed this when an older man, when his wife passes away,
Doesn't know how to do anything.
he marries immediately. He finds someone and marries her because he literally does not know how to take care of himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to hit on, and I don't know if you have this in your notes, but I was surprised at the amount of, Rocky overall, the fact that they talk about as much as they do, but there's the sequence where he's talking to his guys on the line before he's furloughed.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Me and my wife went to go see a Rocky movie." And he's obviously just talking because he wants to, sort of talk about this.
Inspirational.
Yeah.
bit
And they're
of
like,
it.
"Well, which Rocky was it?" And
1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
Because
who did he fight? Did he have a mohawk?
was his manager dead or alive? He
And
didn't
then, of
see
course-
Rocky.
Yeah. And then, of course, they pay it off later when he sort of gets back into shape and they do the whole training sequence. But I thought that was interesting because they were referencing a pop culture moment in a movie, which isn't something that was happening a lot at that time.
That's a really good point. And there was a lot of Rocky. Like you said, there was a poster, like they used the music. There was so much talk about it. And I wonder, Rocky 3 had just come out the year prior. That was probably, I wasn't alive for it, but a trilogy maybe was rare at that time. And it was like becoming this cultural phenomenon that they started talking about it in movies.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I thought it was interesting because now it's so common
Mhm.
for pop culture to be referenced within movies. But like for me, that jumped out. I was like, wow, that seems like very, very untraditional for that time period.
Indeed. All right. Then we also have the neighbor, Joan. She's like
Yeah.
the vixen divorcee, very attractive neighbor that, of course, is trying to seduce Jack. Her name in the movie is Joan.
And Jillian.
And Jillian. I didn't know who that was.
Yeah, Ann Jillian was kind of, I knew Ann Jillian. She was on a show called It's a Living,
Mm-hmm.
which was like about cocktail waitresses in a hotel.
Okay.
And I don't really know if she ever really, I think she might have just become more of a TV person. And I think she was married to somebody, I want to say Gerald McRaney, maybe, like the guy from Major Dad. I could be completely wrong here, but like she married somebody like somebody equally as famous. And then I also think I probably remember her too. Like I believe she battled breast cancer, and I think that kind of gave her like more awareness in people's minds. But she was great in this movie. There's the one sequence where like the one neighbor says to her, she's like, he's married, and she's like, we both were as well.
So were we.
Yep.
Yeah, she was good too. And then we already talked about Jeffrey Tambor and Christopher Lloyd. Now the kids, again, I don't know. I thought the kids did a really good job, particularly the oldest son, who we will recognize. Alex is the older son, and he's played by Frederick Kohler.
Yeah, and he was on Kate and Alley, right?
Chip. He played Chip on Kate and Alley. And did you watch the HBO show Oz?
Yeah.
He was Andrew Schillinger.
Wow.
But it's been so long since I've seen that. Which character is that? Do you remember?
No, I don't. Wow.
But that's
wild.
a pretty main character. So yeah, that's who Frederick Kohler is. Taliesin Jaffe plays Kenny. That's quite a name.
Yeah.
And
no,
then,
his parents, his dad was Roland Jaffe, I want to say.
Oh, I wondered.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's like a Hollywood family. Like I think Jaffe, I want to say, did he produce the early Woody Allen films maybe? But so we
talked about him on season 1 because he directed Patrick Swayze movie where he goes to India.
Oh, okay.
City of Joy.
Okay. Yeah. So that kid, he's an early Nepo baby, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But he was good as well. The great scene I've always remembered is when Michael Keaton is trying to convince him to finally cut the cord with his security blanket. Mm-hmm. And they do like a trial separation, I guess, where he's not going to get rid of the blanket, but he's just going to hold on to it. And then the kid, like he says very calmly, can I have a moment to myself, please? And that scene like always cracked me up as a kid. It still cracked me up as an adult. Like it just seemed like such a, he was like maintaining his emotions. Like he was staying calm, but you could see like under the surface, he needed a minute to deal.
Yeah. The whoopee was a big part of this movie. The little baby daughter, Megan, is played by twins. Courtney and Brittany White. Were you familiar with the music guy, Lee Holdridge?
Not by name, no.
I wasn't either. But when I looked, you will be. Yeah. He's a Haitian-born American composer, conductor, and orchestra, 18-time Emmy Award nominee, yada, yada, yada. So he's got some skills, but he also composed music for Beastmaster.
Oh, wow.
Which was like on TV, like on loop in the 80s.
Yeah.
As well as Splash, which is one of my favorite movies. I loved Splash so much.
Yeah. Did I read that Ron Howard was offered this movie, but he did Splash instead? Might be a fact. I was like, they didn't, but they did Splash instead. So the guy that did music for Splash, okay.
Mm-hmm. Not being familiar with Lee Holdridge, I recognized several points in this movie where the music really was helpful and effective. Also, the use of all of the, each moment has its like, there was like the Olympics. What's that song that is used?
Oh, yeah. Like it was like,
slow-mo.
Yeah.
Like the race.
Yeah. It almost felt like Chariots of Fire-ish.
Yes.
Like it was a riff on Chariots of Fire.
It was,
yeah.
I think. Yeah. And then just to evoke certain emotion, this movie made me feel it was a combination of all of that. The music, the way that the house looked, all of the 80s memorabilia that I noticed, like the color of the appliances. They had a trash compactor, the wood grain station wagon, those tiny TVs in a kitchen, or it was like a portable little TV that he had too that he was moving around.
Yeah.
Soap opera culture. Like just the very familiar formulaic nature of it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't boring, there was also the standard babysitter that comes and is
Oh.
so clearly unfit because of
Yeah.
she's like this punk rock girl.
Yeah. She's just there to get some money.
Just there's so much of it. And I think it took me a minute to think about why, but I think it was that combination of those things from the 80s that are familiar and the music. I felt so at home and I got this comfy, homey, cozy feeling rewatching this.
Yeah. And the other funny thing about it too is there's no, I mean, even though they sort of set up the marital rift where, you know, you have Joan and then you have the Martin Mull character, you know, that are both trying to infringe on them, but it never got too heavy. Like you never truly like worried. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's just like the overall vibe of the movie is just, it's not going to go that route, you know, like it's not going to get that dark. So yeah, no, I definitely understand what you're saying in terms of like the, you know, it almost wraps you in your own little wubby.
Good call. Good call. Well, to your point, apparently there was a scene in the original script or a script at some point where Joan, when she is kissing in the,
Oh,
well, that's
like
a whole nother, in the
the
sequence.
soap opera flashback.
Yes.
Or imaginary scene.
That is like a soap opera. Yeah, she has a negligee on, but I guess originally it had called for her to be topless.
Yeah.
And she was like, not for this kind of a movie.
Yeah. No, she definitely knew the script better than some of the other people involved. Yeah, that would have been so out of place and random.
Even though it was like an imagination sequence. But yeah, that was, I had forgotten that kind of a thing was done.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot about that whole sequence.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's really cool because there's the point where you realize, oh, this is like in his head.
Because it's the Young and Restless music that he's watching.
Yeah.
It's very cleverly done.
Yeah. It's funny when you're clued in. Yeah, no, that was a fun sequence. I think we talked about every scene of the movie.
I know. This was just my own question because I feel like in TV shows and in movies, there's always a reference to, why is there a limo here? Who died?
Oh.
And I never really got it. I grew up in the Midwest. We didn't get a limo for a funeral. Is that a thing elsewhere?
No, not that I could recall.
You guys let us know. What's the story with limos and funerals? Why is that a trope in movies? I don't know. I do work in marketing, and I always grew up thinking ad agency culture was cool. And it's because literally every movie in the 80s is set around an ad agency or an ad exec or something.
Yeah. You know what? I wanted to talk to you about this because I guess like the big breakthrough for her is like, I guess the tuna company, Schooner Tuna's like sales are down or whatever. And she comes up with this promotion to reduce the price of a can of tuna by 50 cents until I guess troubled times are past. But like 50 cents per can seemed like a lot because I think like when I go to buy tuna now, like sometimes I can get 10 cans for $10. So
I wondered that too.
I was like,
especially in
wow,
the
how
80s.
much was, how much was a can of tuna in 1983? Like,
She did say it was one of the more expensive. It must have been like one of the higher end cans of tuna. I do not know how much a can of tuna costs, but I thought the same thing. Like a single, if you weren't buying in bulk in 1983, 50 cents was a big discount.
that's what I mean. Like, I think if like I went to the store today to buy tuna, it would be like $1.59 a can or something. So 40 years ago, you'd think that it wouldn't be $1.59 a can. That 50 cents just seemed like wild to me. But it's also funny too, because it could also clue us into like how out of touch Hollywood is. You know,
Yeah.
like it's like nobody even researched what a can of tuna was. They're like, oh, 50 cents off a can would be a big deal. Whereas like in 2025, that definitely rang a bell with me. I was like, wait a minute.
Unless it was that fancy tuna. I had no idea.
Yeah. No, I'm, Jewish guy from the Northeast. So like a tuna melt with like coleslaw, onion rings, and a pickle. That's my go-to. That's probably my death row meal.
Oh, not in a million years. I also liked the trope of housewives being like letting themselves go and him also like he grows a beard and he gains some weight and he never changes his flannel.
Flannel. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was cute.
Yeah. And there's also that funny scene where he like sort of drags them into his world a little bit where like he gets like, instead of bridge, they play poker and they're using coupons instead of money.
Yes,
Which I
that
thought
was so
yeah.
funny.
It's like,
Yeah.
I'll
Also,
see you and raise you 2 tender victuals, or whatever. It was clever.
couponing. Do people use coupons now? Is that a thing that people do?
Well, I know for me, I have an app for like Smith's where
Okay.
like, you can clip digital deals or whatever.
I do. Yeah. Same with
Yeah.
Sprouts.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the whole idea of clipping coupons and stuff probably isn't as like prevalent today. Like people that didn't live through it would probably be like, what are they doing?
I worked at a grocery store that on certain days was triple
Oh,
coupons.
yeah.
But we didn't, this was in the 90s and it was kind of an old school grocery store.
You didn't
I
honor
had
it?
to type it in.
Oh, yeah.
And people, like, we couldn't just scan the code. So I had people would come with this stack and it would take, I'm like 10 king, but
Yeah.
people would save like $200 off
Yeah.
their bill. Like if they had
Yeah.
a huge cart.
Wow.
Also-
So you have Sprouts out there, huh?
Yeah. That's
Yeah, we
my
have them here in
primary.
Las Vegas, and Sprouts was a new thing for me when I moved here.
Oh, yeah,
So,
same.
like,
Because
yeah.
we don't, Nebraska does not have them. I did want to also share, I had forgotten about this until I saw the laundry scene. It's like was it brown or green? But it was one of those
Yeah.
late 70s
It might have been
colors.
like that avocado green. I think it was brown though.
Yeah. Well, so he shoves as much as he possibly can in the machine. And he thinks he's being smart by mixing a bunch of various types of both the softener and the detergent and something else. I don't even know what
Yeah.
it was.
Hmm.
And then, of course, the machine, is jumping around. It's off balance and it pulls the water hoses off. And so
Yeah.
then that's part of the chaos scene. What it reminded me of when I was little, and I think at this time we had the Harvest Gold appliances in our kitchen still. So it was probably in the 80s. And I thought I was being helpful by starting the dishwasher,
Oh.
but I put hand wash. I didn't
Oh.
realize there was a difference between dishwasher detergent
Oh, yeah.
and like Dawn, like hand
Oh,
washing.
my goodness. How sudsy did it get?
There was like a foot in the kitchen, like a foot of suds.
Oh,
And-
my goodness. That's
But
hilarious.
I thought I was trying to be helpful and
Yeah.
screwed it up. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's funny.
Well, Craig, I feel like, I don't know. I really, really enjoyed rewatching Mr. Mom.
Same.
Again, like I said, it just brought me this very comforting feeling. But it is time now to return to present day reality until the next Retromade episode. Do you have any closing thoughts, Craig, on Mr. Mom?
No,
before we
again,
head out?
it's just a nice sort of non-threatening feel 91-minute escape. And it's a little sort of time capsule back to the pre-internet days, which was something I thought about. I was like, wow, he's existing in this house with these kids with daytime TV because he can't just open up Netflix and watch whatever he wants. So he has no choice but to watch The Young and the Restless. So it was cool. It was cool taking a trip back and sort of remembering life before technology, changed, our day to day.
Indeed. Yeah. At first, so we see him make a turn. At first, he's like, who would watch this?
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, he's like calling the neighbor and they're like, whose baby is it?
Yeah.
No, it couldn't
Oh
be
my
his.
goodness. And then he's like, but he had a vasectomy. And then he's like, it didn't pay.
And it was Victor. I mean, it was the actual Young and the Restless episodes that they were playing. I'm like, I know these characters.
So funny.
Yeah. Well, tell us where we can find you and what's the next episode?
Okay. Goodness. So you can find me if you just go to your podcast catcher of choice or just in Google, if you type the goat De Palma, the show will come up. You can find that. I'm very, very, very behind on the show. So I'm literally recording episodes very close to release. So for the next episode, which I'm not sure when this is going to drop.
I'm very
Okay.
behind. So everything. Yeah.
So I normally release episodes every other Tuesday. So the next episode will either be early pre-theatrical De Palma, where I'll look at the short films he made, or I'll be looking at his first film, Murder a la Mode. But either way, that's what's coming down the line, and it will be a solo episode. I also have some great stuff lined up, but also I'm really proud of some episodes I've done recently. I did an episode with filmmaker Pete Gelderblum, who, not to get too in the weeds here, he watched the De Palma movie Raising Cain with John Lithgow, discovered that it was edited differently than the script, and went and made a director's cut, or made an edit based on De Palma's original script. And when they were releasing it on home video, De Palma had found Pete's edit, and he was like, yeah, the only way I'm going to sign off on this is if you include Pete's edit of my movie. And it has since been called like the alternate, quote unquote director's cut, which is just amazing. So being able to sit down with Pete and go through the whole process of how it came to be is pretty interesting. But
that was an interesting episode. I very much enjoyed it.
Thank you. And then also a movie I never thought I'd talk about was Bonfire of the Vanities, which I sat down with Ryan about. And in the next couple of months, I'm also going to revisit a movie I never thought I would talk about on the show, which is 2006's The Black Dahlia, which is a movie I do not like. So I'm interested in sitting down and watching that again, because a potential guest was like, yeah, I want to talk about The Black Dahlia, and here's why. And I was like, oh my God, I think I have to revisit this movie. So some exciting.
De Palma? Is that?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. So some interesting things down the pike. But yeah, if you're at all interested in film, definitely give it a look. The Goat De Palma, if you Google that, you'll find it, like I said, in your podcast catcher of choice. But thank you so much for allowing me to plug my show and bringing me on and talking this movie. I always enjoy guesting on people's shows.
Anytime. And if you are watching or listening and you are enjoying this episode, you know what I'm going to ask. You can email me. I do want to hear from you. So email me, retromadepodcast@gmail.com. You can comment on YouTube or Facebook, or if you want to be the ultimate fan, I would very much appreciate a review. It does help more retro fans find the show. But until next time, be kind, rewind.